Welcome to the Hope for the Animals podcast, a project of compassionate living. I'm your host, Hope Bohannick, and today we are joined by a legend in the vegan foods industry, Seth Tibbott. Mr. Tofurky himself will be joining us. Seth invented Tofurky, the first ever packaged and marketed vegan holiday roast. Now, I know it's rare on this show that we talk about food. Our focus here is generally on the animals and ethics, but food is also very important, the vegan food. We need good, yummy vegan options to be able to live a vegan life. And my work that I do with compassionate living leans into the food more around the veg fests that I organize. And as you may know, I organize the Sonoma County Veg Fest in Santa Rosa every year for the past 10 years and still do. But my husband and I moved to Eugene, Oregon a couple of years ago, and there's never been a large scale vegan event here in Eugene, which was really surprising to me as this area is very vegan friendly. So I started just kind of floating the idea with some of my new vegan friends up here, like, wouldn't it be great if? And the response was amazing. People were really, really encouraging and coaxing me to do it, excited about the possibility. And somehow, even though I didn't plan to do it, I got sucked into creating the first ever Eugene Vegan Fest. Sucked in by excitement and good energy and like 30 dedicated, awesome volunteers that are helping me now. It's really been wonderful to build the community, the volunteer community around this event. And it's getting exciting because we are just a couple months away. And our guest today, Seth Tibbott, founder of Tofurky, will be speaking in our impact room at the Eugene Vegan Fest because he's up here in Oregon and has been for decades. So if you're in the Pacific Northwest area, please join us on May 4th. If you've ever wanted to explore Oregon, well, this might be a good opportunity. Come to the Eugene area early May and make the Eugene Vegan Fest one of your stops on a tour of amazing nature, the most beautiful coast in the world, waterfalls. Springtime is such an amazing time for all the waterfalls here. We are really loving it here in the Pacific Northwest. It's gorgeous, it's vegan friendly, there is a rich arts culture and grassroots political action going on. It's a great area. We love it. So anyway, getting back to our topic at hand, let's talk Tofurky. Tofurky, it's become a household name and it's been featured on numerous TV shows, including The X-Files, The Tonight Show, and it was even the answer to a $400 question on Jeopardy. So let's get into the interview and meet the creator of the iconic Tofurky. So today on the podcast, we are honored to have a legend. We have Seth Tibbott joining us. He was a teacher and naturalist before he founded Turtle Island Foods in 1980, which is now the Tofurky Company. In 1995, Seth introduced the first nationally marketed vegan holiday roast called Tofurky, which soon became the most well-known meat alternative brand in the U.S. Seth has chronicled his 40-year overnight success story in a new book called In Search of the Wild Tofurky. Welcome to the podcast, Seth.
Hi, Hope. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining me. I'm really excited to talk to you. I have seen you and heard you speak over the years for many, many years at the National Animal Rights Conference and Veg Fests back in the day. And I'm so excited to finally be in your area, both of us being in the Pacific Northwest. And you are really a hero of the movement. And heroes often have interesting origin stories. So, why don't we start with why and when you went vegan all those years ago?
Yeah, I became first a vegetarian in 1972 after reading Diet for a Small Planet by Francis Moore Lapay, which really pointed out the inefficiency of feeding, all these wonderful grains to animals. You had this way of producing protein where you put 15 pounds of grains into the animal, and then you got back maybe 8 ounces or a pound of protein. And
Right.
as a naturalist at the time in Ohio, it really didn't make a lot of sense. I saw that there was a lot of encroachment on the wild animal habitats in Ohio from farms. And I thought, if we had a more efficient way of producing protein, then the wild animals wouldn't have such a habitat loss that they're experiencing now. So I became a vegetarian after an epic meal of lentils, rice, and onions that a friend cooked up for me, and I just felt so good and light after it. So I guess I came in through the environmental door. But a couple years later, I started following this guru, Stephen Gaskin, who founded a community in rural Tennessee called The Farm.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 1,200 hippies living on the farm at
Yeah.
that point, and they were all what they called pure vegetarians. The word vegan had been invented in 1944, I believe it was, and yet it wasn't in the vernacular of people's talk. They go, "Oh, you're a vegetarian? Are you a lacto vegetarian? Or are you a pure vegetarian?" Well, these guys were all pure vegetarians. So I went down there, and so I had a brush with veganism right then at the farm. And I actually found tempeh down there at the farm because that was one of the foods that they were making.
Mm.
And I came back to Oregon and was making tempeh for friends and family at my house in a little picnic cooler with a light bulb. And later I grew up to have an old refrigerator with Christmas tree lights that I used for heat. That was back when Christmas tree lights could burn your house
And
down.
yeah, and put off a lot of heat. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Not so much anymore.
Right.
Anyways, I had really still at that point was a vegetarian, and it wasn't really until 2012 when I went to the farm sanctuary to give a talk, and I went on a tour of the farm, and I laid down there with these pigs, and I was like, oh my God, like how could anybody take this beautiful animal and destroy it for, you know, bacon? I mean, I wasn't really eating meat per se, but still it resonated with me. And I
Mm.
said, kind of right then and there, that I was going to be vegan. That's why I really love animal, farm sanctuaries. And I have a soft spot in my heart because I think they have the power to connect people like they did to me.
Yeah.
And we do a Tofurky trot on Thanksgiving every year that raises like $30,000 for local farm animal sanctuaries, of which we're blessed with many in the Portland. I think there's 5, 6 sanctuaries in the Portland area alone. So
Yeah, I was amazed at how many farmed animal sanctuaries there are in Oregon, even around this area, the Eugene area. There's a lot, and then even more up in the Portland area. It's really wonderful.
it
Yeah.
is. And they have a lot of power. People say, oh, it's only that they're saving a small number of animals. It's not worth it. And I'm like, you kidding me? It's way bigger when you look at the total footprint of people that come there and
Yeah.
experience it and decide, like I did, that no, I'm not going to eat these wonderful creatures
Yeah.
anymore.
And it's certainly worth it for those animals getting,
Absolutely.
yeah,
They
to
are the
live
lucky
free.
ones for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And I just have so much respect and love for these places.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's really cool that you had a connection to the farm in Tennessee. When I went vegan in 1990, the one cookbook that I had that I loved, that I just cherished and almost I probably made every recipe in that book was the farm's cookbook, their vegan cookbook. Yeah, it was a wonderful community.
Oh yeah, I still have that book. I have it right here in my bookshelf.
Really? I
And
might as well. Yeah, I'll bet I do
you
too.
know,
And it shows just the wide assortment and population that has been vegan or experimenting with vegetarianism from kind of all sides, right? Communal and hippie and spiritual and now coming more into the mainstream, which is awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been a long journey. I've
Yeah.
been interested to just track that journey, which really started in this country, in the 1800s, like 1817, when 41, I think it was, Bible Christian vegetarians came over from where else? England. And it was actually outside of Liverpool where they had their church. And most people don't realize that it goes back that far. I
Yeah.
sometimes start my talks and say, how old do you think the vegetarian movement is in this country? And most of the answers are like, the 1960s, I think, because that's old to a lot of young
Right,
people
right.
today,
Yeah.
I guess. But it really has a long history in this country. And even before then, there was vegetarian choirs, and Ben Franklin was had a vegetarian period of his life, and he
Hmm.
actually was one of the first people to bring tofu into the United States
Hmm.
and talk
Wow.
about it. So
Yeah.
there's a long history, and then a long history in Oregon too, as
Hmm.
um, like the Bible Christians started in Philadelphia, and then the movement went over to Battle Creek, Michigan, where there was Kellogg had a big sanitarium there where he was feeding vegetarian food to all of Amelia Earhart and Henry Ford and Taft, the president of the United States. They'd come there. They were giving them exercise, like exercise was kind of new then too,
Hmm.
and feeding them veg food. And he invented the first meat alternatives. And then one of his followers came out to Portland, this guy Belknap, and he started a little sanitarium right here in Portland in 1896, I think it was. So
Mm, yeah.
we go back way in
Yeah.
farther than people think.
And this is going to be part of, I think, your talk that you're going to be giving at our Eugene Vegan Fest. This is the reason that I wanted to have you on, is that you are going to be presenting at our upcoming Eugene Vegan Fest in Eugene, Oregon, May 4th, 2025. And we're really excited. We're so honored that you are going to come down and present. And the title of your presentation is Oregon's Hidden Plant-Based History and Promising Future. And so I think you're gonna cover some of this, probably what you were just talking about in that talk. Do you want to talk a little about what you're going to present, just to give us a taste? Let's entice people to come and hear the whole thing. But what are you going to
Yeah,
talk about?
yeah, sure. This whole discovery process of the history of vegetarian foods in Oregon is so new to me. I mean, I'm really having a ball because I'm going back and reading all these old newspaper articles from the 1890s and 1900s and seeing that there was this movement that I had no idea was so strong in Portland. Portland had four vegetarian restaurants in 1900, and I'll be talking about that, all through the 1890s, in response to how vegetarians were being portrayed in the newspapers. There were bodybuilders back then. There was this guy, this vegetarian that rode from Boston to New York City in this rowboat in record time, eating nothing but watermelon and whortleberries. I don't even know what a whortle. I
What's
guess
a whortleberry?
I think it's a kind of blueberry, an old
Oh,
kind of blueberry.
fascinating.
And there was this woman that walked from New York to Chicago in record time. And, there
Wow.
was Kellogg back at the Battle Creek Sanitarium was doing tests of like how long can vegetarians hold out their arms and do squat thrusts compared to meat eaters. And
Wow.
so
What
there's a
year was
long,
or what around what time was this?
that was the 1890s.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, Kellogg, I know Kellogg, the brand, the man behind the brand started as very like vegetarian friendly, like plant-based. Like that was their whole thing, right?
Well, there were two brothers. There was Will, who actually spun off and did the cornflakes and the Kellogg brand, and then John Harvey, who was a gastrointestinal surgeon, and he was the vegan vegetarian guy behind. And he ran the Battle Creek Sanitarium.
Okay.
He created peanut butter.
What?
He created
I thought John
all
Carver. Oh no, he created the peanut.
well,
And
yeah, I
then
mean,
maybe okay.
actually, Native Americans have been using nut butters
Well,
for
yes, of course.
centuries, so
Right,
it's
right.
not like,
Let's get real
but
about
it's
yeah,
like they
inventing
popularized
things.
it.
Yeah.
And so we'll
Yeah.
track a lot of the companies that grew out of Oregon and movements. So I'm just excited to share that story with people because it's
Yeah.
been exciting to me to uncover it, because vegetarianism's been alive and well a long time in this country, but it goes in and out of favor with the media narrative of the time. Yeah, so I'm really excited to come down to Eugene. I always love coming to Eugene. I go to the country fair every year
Oh yeah.
and speak at the Veg Fest and meet everybody down there that's doing the good work of expanding vegetarianism and veganism. And so it'll be a lot of fun to
Yeah.
talk there.
Wonderful. We're excited to have you for sure. And I'd love to hear maybe a little more about Tofurky because that's part of this history, a part that you were you played an integral role, right? I mean, you founded the actual first roast Tofurky, and as a longtime vegan, I really appreciate I've appreciated Tofurky all these years, all the Thanksgivings where we had something, to include as our centerpiece, whether it was at our family meals or, at our vegan potlucks or whatever. It's really helped to normalize veganism. Can you share the history of this product? Tell us how on earth you had this idea and how it came to be.
Yeah, well, Tofurky happened in 1995, but I had been in business since 1980 and I was making tempeh as the product because I had found tempeh on the farm in Tennessee and fell in love with it. And I actually I was a naturalist. I was making tempeh and just feeling like this is going to be the next big thing. It's going to be like granola. Like there'll be shelves of tempeh in the supermarkets. So, anyways, I started making tempeh, and I was just selling it locally, mostly in the Pacific Northwest. I'd go down to Eugene to Sundance and some of the other natural food stores, and I'd give tempeh demonstrations there. And it was a struggle for me for many years. I was growing slow but sure, but I still wasn't really making a good living wage for myself or my employees. In the first 10 years of being in business from 1980 to 1989, I averaged take-home pay of $300 a month, and
Wow.
that was over 10 years. And I actually couldn't afford the rent in the houses even back then in Klickitat County where I lived. And so I built a tree house and lived in this tree for 7 years of that
Oh,
because
wow.
I rented the four trees that I built the tree house in for $25 a month. So I said, I can afford that.
That's
And
great.
so it was a struggle. And about 1990, I started figuring out, I'm probably a failure at this business. It's not really happening. And I feel bad that I can't pay people more and I can't pay myself. So I tried to get out of the tempeh business, and I wanted to write a book on tree houses. So I started traveling around the country and looking at tree houses and filming them, and that didn't work. Uh, Somebody beat me to the punch, and they
Mm.
wrote a book on tree houses and were successful. So I said, well, I guess I'm going to have to go back to old tempeh and see what I can do with that. And long about that time, I fell in love and I met my wife, Sue. And a year or two later, we had our son, Luke. And so now I was like, I really got to get serious about, because I have more than myself to take care of. So I have a family now. Anyways, fast forward to 1995, and for years I had been going to this Thanksgiving in Ashland in a little cabin that one of my outdoor school friends had built. And us naturalists would gather around, and a lot of us were vegetarians, so we tried all these vegetarian foods for Thanksgiving. We tried a stuffed pumpkin that collapsed in the oven. We had a chicken roast you couldn't cut with a chainsaw. We had all these failures and we laugh about them now. But I had gone into Portland and one of my clients, the Higher Taste, which is still a fabulous business in Portland, and they sell sandwiches and salads all over town and the Northwest. This guy, Hans, who was my friend, was making a tofu roast for about 25 of his top customers and selling them for like $50. And you got a little thing of gravy and you got this dome of tofu. And he was the inspiration for this. I was like, Hans, let's go into business. I had always liked the name Tofurky because King Harvest in 1981, when I was delivering tempeh to the stores around Portland, had a tofurkey sandwich. And it was just tofu, kind of sort of flavored like turkey. And I would enjoy those, when I was delivering the tempeh. So I called them up and I said, hey, do you use the word tofurkey still? And they go, no, we canceled that long ago. That's a stupid name. And other people told me it was a stupid name, but I was like, I've been trying to be like this straight businessman for 15 years, and what has it gotten me? I mean, I'm going to go with my gut and something that I really think is funny and, you know, uh,
Catchy,
catchy.
catchy and
And
fun.
so
Yeah.
we came out with Tofurky, and I bought the roast from Hans, and we made 8 tempeh drumsticks, and we put in the box with the tofu roast and the gravy. And the customers went nuts. We put in these postcards into the first Tofurkeys. That's how you communicated back then. There wasn't email. Al
Hmm.
Gore hadn't invented the internet yet.
Right.
And we put in these postcards, and people were writing back, oh my God, I've been waiting 20 years from this product. I'm not a
Yeah.
second class citizen anymore. And,
Yeah.
on and on and on. So we knew we were on to something, and the media, they went crazy for it. It just took off from there. And,
Mm.
just every year, fall would come, and the media would come to our door and say, what are you doing with Tofurky this year? And how many did you sell last year? And we had sold 800 of them in 1995 in just the Pacific Northwest, pretty
Wow.
much.
Wow.
And then, fast forward to today, I think we're over 8 million or something Tofurky.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Yeah, it's
so, but,
probably
we
in
sell.
it's I mean, if even if the grocery store doesn't sell hardly any other vegan products, you can usually find a tofurkey at Thanksgiving
Yeah.
in
And,
any
and
store. Yeah.
But the other product that's actually, the mainstay of our portfolio of products is the deli slices, the Tofurky deli
Oh, yeah.
slices,
And they're
which
so good.
are
Yeah.
just everywhere.
Yeah.
And, we dominate that category. And we've been making those since 1997 because after the first couple of years of the holiday season, which was great because tempeh sales would slow down around Christmas and Thanksgiving because people would go off their vegan or vegetarian diets and eat other stuff. Having a holiday product was great, but then January would come around and the phone would die down and the buzz of Tofurky would stop. And so we were like, I wonder how we could continue this product and this buzz all throughout the year. And so we looked at the turkey companies and they said, oh, well, they have sausage and deli slices and all this. So we came out with the deli slices and they were a hit. And those are found in, I don't know, 20, 30,000 stores at this point.
Wow.
And
Wow, that's amazing.
it's just a real great product. And we have sausages and chicken. And now we just came out with a great pepperoni that is like amazing. It's the first
Mm.
vegan pepperoni that's aged like meat pepperoni is.
Mm.
And so that's coming out in stores. And yeah, there's just all kinds of room for growth. And we have a nice R&D plant, so we're always working on new products and
Oh, wonderful.
expanding veganism because that's our goal is to veganize the world.
I love it. Incredible. Incredible. Yeah, so I'd love to get your take on these new products like Impossible and Beyond that have just made these huge headlines. These products that people are now calling alt protein or alternative protein. And vegan products, of course, have been around for a long time. We've been talking about that, and for me, a nut burger is just as good. Like I really love, a good veggie burger. But of course, they're trying to kind of mimic meat with these products, which, is interesting and good for transitioning people. But they've gotten so much attention and press, which is wonderful. But I'm just wondering how this is affecting the market and what's going on right now with these kind of more showcased products. Do you want to talk a little about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I see that there's two types of people. There's people like my wife who never liked meat growing up, and doesn't want anything mimicking meat,
Right,
but she
right.
eats like a lot of broccoli and rice, tofu.
Hmm.
Um,
And I think people that like me that have been vegan for 30 years and don't even remember what meat tastes like. So we like
Absolutely.
the plant-based. Yeah, yeah.
But there's also people like myself who are like, I grew up eating meat, and you see this constantly in social media, like the meat eaters and stuff the trolls will jump on, some site like Veg News or something and go, when they're talking about a new meat-like product, they go, why do these, if you hate meat so much, like, why do you make your products taste like meat? And the answer is that, most people didn't give up meat because of the flavor. They gave up meat because of the cruelty,
Yeah.
because of the environmental unsustainability of it, and, what it does to your health. So if you can deliver meat in a plant-based form to these people that is a healthier way and it's a better way for the environment and it takes out the cruelty, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And, I like Beyond and Impossible burgers. I will barbecue them. I also like tempeh and tempeh burgers and broccoli and tofu. So I like both kinds of approaches there. And I'm all for both because we're in a pickle here with the environment and the climate change. And one of the biggest factors is animal agriculture. And we've got to get out of it.
Yeah.
And any way we can get out of it and produce healthy, sustainable diets that aren't murdering all these animals every year is great for me. So I think Beyond and Impossible, they had their day, but they really inspired a lot of other companies. There's this company now, Juicy Marbles. I don't know if you've seen that. It's like
No.
steak kind of like there's
It's
several
what?
different
I'm sorry, it's what?
companies making steaks
Oh,
now.
steak, steak. Okay.
Yeah, like
Huh.
beef steak, and
Oh,
they're
that actually has like the probably like the marbling in it or whatever.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Juicy Marbles is one. I've also had 3D printed steak.
Whoa.
Like, 3D printers that you can print
Yeah.
anything with. There's several. I've had 3D printed steak, I've had 3D printed salmon, and I've had 3D printed pork. And
That's bizarre. Wow.
I know,
Yeah.
but
What's it made of? How they
it's
just like put the ingredient, how does that work?
different things, but it's like pea protein, soy protein, coconut oil, and
Hmm.
flavors, and
Okay, okay. And they just
they're
put that into
they're
the machine and it makes it. Wow.
yeah, it's
Interesting. Yeah.
really amazing to me. I mean, because the texture of salmon is so hard to replicate because it's all layered and everything, and it was really amazing.
Mm.
But
Well,
the
yeah, maybe the 3D printing then like makes the texture more meat-like, maybe.
Absolutely,
Yeah, huh.
texture is really phenomenal. That's one of the things that's getting traction out there in the market now.
Yeah.
They still need to bring the price down, but they're not getting subsidies, and
Yeah,
nobody's paying the true cost of meat in the grocery store. So
that's right.
we're kind of playing with one hand tied behind our back in that sense. But I also have seen there's some interesting fermentations going on. Tempeh is so good for the body. When you eat tempeh, you just feel great. And I love tempeh. But now there's koji fermented deli slices that are coming on. There's this product called Find, FYND, that is they make a yogurt and they make a breakfast patty and some other products, and they're fermenting this from I believe it's a
It's like a
mold or
mushroom,
it might be a
right?
bacteria. It's a
Something like,
single-celled
yeah.
organism
Oh,
they found in a hot spring in Yellowstone National Park.
whoa.
And NASA found this in 1970 when they were looking at extreme environments on Earth that replicated maybe what they would find on a different planet. And they were thinking, if we're sending these astronauts deep into space, how are we going to feed them? And so they've experimented around with proteins that could be replicated in space from a single organism. And
Wow, wow.
they found it in the 70s, but they never used it because we weren't sending astronauts deep into space. But now that our own Earth is looking more and more like a spaceship with limited resources deep into space, it's been dusted off. And the yogurt's great. I think it's really a creative and unique product, and it's
Yeah.
called Find.
Yeah, I've heard of this fermentation process and products. And actually, we had someone on the podcast a couple of years ago that talked about it. And I think that they can also use like they can ferment seaweeds and mushrooms and just all kinds of cells from these things into products that mimic animal products. Really
Absolutely.
interesting. Yeah. Well, Seth, it's really been great having you on. I know we have to wrap up and finish here. So I want to ask you our last question that we ask everyone. What gives you hope for the future?
Well, I hope for the future that we stop eating animals, one. And, I think all movements have peaks and valleys, times when they're hot and happening and times when they're slower. And right now we're in an age of massive misinformation about so many things, but particularly about, plant-based foods. The meat industry is full of trolls, and they spend, all day long going onto sites and sowing controversy and misinformation. But I still believe in truth. And the truth is that these plant-based vegan diets are good for people, they're good for the planet, and they're good for animals. And that is really what is going to carry the ball forward into the future. And I just love that there is such a large part of the population who is gravitating towards these tasty and nutritious plant-based foods. And in, 100 years, it's going to be a way different percent of the food that is out there that is plant-based and vegan than there is today. So I'm really hopeful for the future. And, I think we have truth on our side. And, as long as we speak it compassionately, that we're going to be in good shape.
Mm, good. Yeah. Yeah, and it is just going to grow. The products, the availability is just going to grow, and the growth that we have seen just in the last few decades has been amazing, and that is due in large part to you, Seth. I mean, Tofurky has been such a huge part of building that product base, building the availability and the normalization, and also showing that this food can be really delicious and tasty and available. And I just thank you for that. Thank you so, so much for all that you have done to move us forward.
Well, it's kind of you to say, Hope, but I say too that Tofurky wouldn't be possible without the groundswell of support from the general public. It's the individuals here that are driving products like Tofurky, and it all starts with the individual and the consumer. So my gratitude is for you and others that are spreading the good word about vegan foods throughout the United States and the world.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we're really excited to have you come down for the Eugene Vegan Fest on May 4th. I will see you then. And I also love that you come down every year for the Oregon Country Fair, which is
Oh
right
yeah.
outside of Eugene. We go every year as well. So we'll have to try to find each other this coming year.
Yeah, you could try the vegan truck stop booth out by the main stage where we have tempeh burgers and
Okay, yeah,
uh
yeah. It's funny, I kind of avoid the main stage area because it's just so crazy and crowded. But I have eaten at that booth before, and it's really good food. So that's so cool. I didn't know you were connected to that.
yeah, I was the part of the founders of that group, which we've started in 19, when was it? 84, I think, was our first year.
Wow, fantastic. I love it. Well, hopefully I'll see you there.
Yep, I hope so, Hope. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Yep, cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Hope for the Animals podcast, a project of compassionate living. Sometimes I can have mixed emotions when I hear about the history of vegetarianism. And when I learn that these vegetarian movements have been happening all over the world for generations, I think when I first learned about it, certainly, and sometimes I still kind of feel this, I don't know, it's like a feeling of, well, dang, maybe it's never going to happen. Maybe we're just going to be another blip like all these other times when, movements tried, when they tried to spread this kindness and compassion. Then I have to kind of step back and realize that change doesn't happen overnight. And it's actually hopeful that there's been people in the past drawn to nonviolence, drawn to a way of living that doesn't hurt animals. So that shows me that it is in our nature, right? At least for some of us, at a fundamental level, we're drawn to this way of living. And we now have a global communication network. And, we're learning so much about how to spread kindness, how to spark compassion in an effective way. And I really hope that this time, in our time, we will keep it going, we will keep it growing, and we'll just keep going and growing, and that we will not just be another blip in history. And you can help. You can help make that happen. You can share this podcast. Give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app to help us to grow. Share it on your social media and with your networks. You can support your local Veg Fest. You can come to our Eugene Vegan Fest in Eugene, Oregon. And of course, you can help every day by living vegan.